Yeah, my name is Bob from New York. I had a question about Isaiah 7:14. It's obviously not talking about Jesus. You could just read the text and it's talking about during the time of King Ahaz, what was going to happen then, not 700 years later. And my question is, if it's plainly talking about that King Ahaz and 700 years before Jesus, Christians would have to admit it's not talking about Jesus. And then they try to claim there's dual fulfillments or whatever. My question is there such a thing as dual fulfillments of prophecy or not dual fulfillments? That's my question. Thank you.
That's a great question. And as it turns out, Christians are just not familiar with Isaiah chapter 7. What they're familiar with is Matthew 1:23. So although Jewish people who are watching right now feel incensed and how could all these hundreds of millions, billions of Christians just be lying right through their teeth and all those things, to their credit, it's important to know that almost no Christian has ever read Isaiah chapter 7 from beginning to end. So it's important to know that your average, when I say average, it's not like average, like more than 50% or 60%. It's 99.99% just never read the chapter in their lives. Although all Christians believe that the book of Isaiah, all 66 chapters, is the word of God. So just to understand that Christians are not familiar with anything you've just said. But you are absolutely correct. As it turns out, the book of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 23, the one of two infancy narratives found in the Christian Bible, mistranslates, misappropriates a very famous passage in Isaiah to support the notion that Jesus was conceived miraculously to Mary. You are absolutely correct. If you read Isaiah 7 in context, if you're a Christian, I implore you to open up Isaiah 7, but instead of doing what the pastor or priest does in church, just start from verse 1. It is axiomatic that the author of the book of Isaiah presupposed that by the time we got to verse 14, you've read the 13 verses that introduce it. As it turns out, it's part of a larger pericope. What's going on? There's an Ephro-Syria war. That's the context of Isaiah 7:14. Syria, the king was Rezin, formed an alliance with the northern kingdom of Israel, not Judah, the southern kingdom, but the northern kingdom of Israel, against the southern kingdom. The king of the south of Judah was Ahaz, a very wicked man. The king of the northern kingdom of Israel was Pekach ben Ramalyahu. Okay, so there's a civil war. Ahaz is a very wicked king. He's a direct descendant of King David and Solomon. So in terms of his genealogy, it was airtight. But he himself was a cruel and wicked king. But he was the worst Davidic king that ever lived. He never repented. He ruled for 16 years, from 20, and he died when he was 36 years old. The point being that Isaiah, in this context, is giving Ahaz, the king of Judah, a sign so he'll know when these two kings, again, Rezin, Syria, not Assyria, but Syria, Aram, and Pekach ben Ramalyahu, the king of the northern kingdom of Israel. Remember, at that time, there was a civil war. So at that time, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Israel, they were at war with each other. And God, through the prophet Isaiah, tells the southern kingdom's king that, look, these two kingdoms will be destroyed by the time this child, who is born to a young woman, will mature. For before the child knows to reject evil and choose good, these two kings will be abandoned. So when the text says, behold, the young woman is with a child, Hineo al-Mohara v'Yeledes Bain, is with a son, V'karos shemo Emmanuel, and she will call his name Emmanuel. Matthew completely mistranslates that. There's no word virgin there. Matthew eviscerates the definite article, changes it from she will call his name to they will call his name. So if you just compare Isaiah 7:14, now if you do this with a Christian Bible, you're dead, you're fried. You have no chance. Just go back to church and ignore me. You'd have to go back to the original Hebrew, or, I mean, if you just can't read a lick of Hebrew, the way you say virgin is betula. That is the only way to convey virginity. The word alma, a young woman, only conveys, well, two things. It conveys gender, female, and young woman. But the key is that this has nothing to do with Jesus. It has nothing to do with something that's going to happen in 700 years. It's an immediate crisis, and Isaiah is providing the reluctant King Ahaz a solution to a very serious problem. Now, Ahaz is a bad guy. He doesn't want any part of this. He's reluctant. He wants to go. Isaiah is saying, look, here's the deal. The problem that you're raising is brilliant, and that is, this has nothing to do with any Messiah at all, has nothing to do with 700 years from now. How would this be a source of comfort? And this has nothing to do with the virgin birth. Nothing. Everything's wrong. Why don't Christians see that? The reason is that Christians don't read this chapter in context. They know it's just the usual suspects in the Hebrew Bible that they memorize. So Isaiah 7:14. That's all they know. They don't see butter and honey will the child eat when it knows to reject bad and choose good, verse 15. For the child, they don't read that, okay? So it's not like Christians are just bad faith actors. They're not. Even their pastors don't know this. Unless they're absolute scholars and they, have got master's degrees, so then they learn it and they got to struggle with it. They have to find these torturous explanations, which we're going to address right now. So I do not want you walking away from this conversation thinking that all Christians are just lying, faking. None of that. They absolutely have no clue. Moreover, the Christian Bible, their translations have all been corrupted. The Septuagint, all corrupted. All of it's been corrupted by the church so that Christians have no access to the original Hebrew, which an Orthodox child could read biblical Hebrew, lahavdil, the way you could read a newspaper. Do you understand all this? Now, the question is, well, there are Christians that are trying to come up with some sort of way out of this. How do you get out of this mess? So it's not like no Christian ever stumbled upon this. They've got whole websites trying to figure out a way to defend this. One of them you raised right now, and it's one of those responses that kind of make you stop and scratch your head for a moment. At first glance, it seems to be there's a dual prophecy. Now, let me just explain. Now, the word dual prophecy doesn't appear anywhere in Tanakh. Nowhere, okay? Hey, give me strength. So there's no, but we're going to leave that alone. What I want to do is just explain this argument, and I'm going to ignore the elephant in the room that the term dual prophecy doesn't exist anywhere. But this is the argument, because I just want to, or else so what does this mean? What they're saying is, look, in the Bible, you can have a prophecy which is addressing the immediate surrounding event, in this case, Ahaz, during the Assyrian Empire. But there's a hidden meaning which really is speaking about event in the future as well, a secondary meaning. So this prophecy is fulfilled twice. That's what dual prophecy means. Now, right away, you're being scammed. Why? Because when you go to church, when you're approached by a missionary, that's not what you're told. Here's what you're told. There are 365 prophecies in the Old Testament which clearly demonstrate that Jesus is the Messiah. So what's happening is, you go online, you order something, you think you're getting a great deal, and instead of getting a great pair of Bose headphones, you open the box, it's a big box, and there's a balloon inside that's broken. Well, you're going, I just been ripped off. Well, that's what's happening. So you're being sold on this is a clear prophecy, and then when you examine it, and you don't have to go really close, you just scratch the surface, you're going, whoa, this is not what I was told when I signed up for church, okay? But what I want to do is I want to ignore that as well, because I want to really address this issue really quite directly. And you'll see that this claim is completely fatuous. Listen carefully. If the claim is that there's a prophecy in Isaiah, which everyone admits, if you read it in context, is addressing a crisis where you have two kingdoms, Syria and the northern kingdom, going to war with the southern kingdom of Israel. The southern kingdom essentially begins where Jerusalem is and just goes south. Okay, so everything south of Jerusalem, which would include Bethlehem, Hebron, all that is the kingdom of Judah. Okay? So the argument goes like this. It is true that this prophecy is about the immediate event, but it has a dual prophecy, means it's fulfilled twice, meaning it's also going to be fulfilled in the time of Jesus. Jesus' Christianity began 700 years after Isaiah. Isaiah lived about 2,700 years ago. You got that? Okay. Remember something I've shared with you, and that is when you lie, it's a very bad idea, because what happens when you lie? I'm old enough to remember Watergate, and some of you are old enough to remember it as well. Why are people petrified of lying? We don't want to lie, but there's another reason, and that is you can't keep up with the lies. So you always get yourself into all kinds of trouble. So normal people don't want to lie. But besides that, you can't keep track of all your lies. You have to be a genius. If you're telling the truth, as Mark Twain said, you don't have to keep track of anything. It'll just work out. Okay, what's the problem here if you say dual prophecy? This is I concede it all. So now you have an existential problem that makes all the other problems seem insignificant. If you're saying that the word Alma in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, means a virgin, which Christians insist, which is complete nonsense. If the word Alma, as the church claims, means a virgin, which it doesn't, but let's say it does, that means there are two virgins here. So you should be asking the Christian, fine, where is our first virgin? If there are two virgins, one in the time of Isaiah and Ahaz during the Assyrian Empire, approximately 2,700 years ago, and then there's another virgin 2,000 years ago, and that we're told is Mary, who gives birth to Jesus without sleeping with Joseph, but rather being impregnated by the Holy Ghost. Who is our first virgin? And the Christian would have to go, well, there was no first virgin. Well, then there's no dual prophecy. Moreover, it just gets worse. This becomes a nightmare. Listen very carefully. You probably have never heard this before. You must look at the context, but I want to just focus in on Isaiah 14, 15, and 16. Read it all, but for a moment. The sign is not the conception or birth of the child. Now, the name of the child, Emmanuel, is very important. See Isaiah chapter 8, verse 10. Very important because God is with us. God is with the southern kingdom. But let's set that aside for a moment. The sign is not the birth or conception of the child. The sign is in verse 15 and 16. How does verse 15 begin? Butter and honey will the child eat, this little boy eat, when he knows to reject bad and choose good. Now, what does butter and honey mean? Well, butter and honey are foods that have to be cultivated. Right? If you're under siege, if you've got you got bread and water if you're lucky. So butter and honey means it's all good. By the way, why did we invent butter? you probably don't know this. Although butter tastes good, it may not be great for you. The reason why butter was invented was in the ancient, really not just the ancient world, but just not that long ago. What did you do when you milked a cow? Fine, you can drink the milk then, but it won't stay long. How do you preserve it if you don't have a refrigerator? So you turn it into butter, and butter will stick around a long time. We then, as we did with all these foods, we figured out how to make them into delicacies. But butter, the point is that it's going to be around a long time. You get it? So butter and honey will a child eat when he knows to reject bad and choose good. I mean, he's still a baby. Why? Because before the child knows to reject bad and choose good, these two kings, namely the king of Syria, Ritzin, and the king of Israel, Pekach ben Ramayahu, they'll be destroyed. So I want to ask you, if this is a dual prophecy, let's say I concede everything. Here are your problems. Number one, who is the virgin in the time of Achaz in Isaiah? Doesn't exist. Two, who are the two kings during the time of Jesus? Doesn't exist. Which baby had butter and did Jesus have butter and honey? And before Jesus knew to reject evil and choose good, the two kings were destroyed? You see what happens? So it doesn't work. It just collapses. Does this work on Google? Yeah. Does it work for people who love Jesus? Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But the whole thing's a scam. It's a complete sham. So it's not that there can't be a dual prophecy. Of course, you can have events where God saved the patriarchs, and the same way that God delivered the children of Israel in ancient times, that God will deliver the Jews in the future. Sure, of course. But to say this is a dual prophecy, well, that's complete nonsense, because if it's a dual prophecy, you have no virgin birth during the time of Isaiah, and you have no two kings during the time of Jesus. Case closed. And I rest my case. Thank you so much for your question. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא ואת נעשה בחפצו כל